Cool. Just giving some breathing time so it gets live on the different channels.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see if anyone's watching at the top next to live, you see an eye icon,
Yeah.
and you will be able to see that.
Okay.
So cool. Thank you, Vincenzo, for being live on Got Talks.
Thank you, Maria, for inviting me.
So this is, I must say, episode 20 of season 2, and it's kind of an experiment to introduce season 3 with a new twist. So that's the last episode with you, and thank you for being a part of this experiment where we're gonna have a long, as normal, like chat conversation, um, but then the audio will be slightly different. So yeah, watch
I, I
watch
like
out for that.
experiments.
Cool. Brilliant. So I'm just going to make a quick introduction. But before that, let's do this fun part that I ask all guests to do. I'm sure you heard that one. And it's about saying, introducing yourself and saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Hi, I'm Vincenzo Di Maria, and you're listening to GUTT Talks, GGUTT."
Hi, everyone. My name is Vincenzo Di Maria, and you're listening to GGUTT, GGUTT.
Super. Thank you. So let me make a quick introduction actually about you, which is difficult. I'm finding it a bit hard these days to do introductions, especially to people I know. So I met Vincenzo back in 2015. I think you were, so I was pursuing a master's in service design at Politecnico di Milano, and I think you were the one who led the first workshop. Um, there it was, which was in a museum. So one thing that stood out for me, and that I've seen over time as well, each time I would see you, like at the Global Service Jam in Bologna, or even in Sicily when I went to one of your events you were organizing on social innovation, you have this contagious passion uh, when you talk about what you do and try to communicate this energy to participants when you teach or you run or facilitate a workshop. And we're going to be talking about training, facilitating, coaching, teaching, not in that exact order as we go along. So let me kick this off actually. Who's Vincenzo?
Vincenzo, as you say, is a passionate designer who does whatever he does with a lot of energy and a lot of beliefs in what he does. So I was born and grew up in Sicily, in the south of Europe, but I did my studies in Rome. I lived in London and Lisbon. I came back to Italy. My life has always been between creativity, design, facilitating, meeting people, and see what people can do with their creative energy. That sometimes turn into social innovation projects, which means doing something good for others. But most of my career has been in the spectrum of designing the intangible elements of what can be designed. So I come from designing products and objects and stuff like this, you know. But I'm always interested in the space between objects and people. So if you design a product or a digital device or whatever complicated system you can imagine, but no one is interacting with it, it's such a waste of time. So I'm interested in designing the space for experience, the space for interaction, the space for services to happen. And that take me more into slightly behavioral science, understanding how people behave, think, their mental model. So Vincenzo is somebody who's passionate about people, after all, and people do great things, behave in a quirky, strange way sometimes, and we can only nudge different way of behaving with our designs.
Cool. Thank you for that. I like the way you're putting this together, and part of it actually I can relate to in a way where you're saying that you come from a background where you're designing objects. Now you showed this object as we're on camera, but who would be listening this to the audio? It was just objects like physical stuff,
Yeah.
really, that you can see, form and function. Obviously, as a designer, it's not just forms, and um, I can relate to that because I have a background as well in physical products and physical spaces. And for me, what led me to, pursue a master's in service design, and this is where I met you as well, is the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing what we're doing? That was the main question that was missing for me in a certain way when designing stuff. So how did you end up to where you're at today? Especially, and I'm gonna start with facilitating because this is how I got to meet you, see you in action. Where did you get this contagious energy and passion from?
Well, I should probably thanks a mix of experiences that I did during my career. First of all, when I finished my master in industrial design at Central St Martin in London, I got the chance and opportunity to work in a research center called Design Against Crime. We're trying to use design to reduce or prevent crime. For me, it was a bit of a creative challenge. How can you anticipate the dark creativity of people trying to stealing a bike or do anything else, robbing you at the ATM machines or pickpocketing on the metro? How can you be more creative and more clever than those people? They've been creative in their own dark way. And so for me, it was a bit of a creative challenge. And I got to do a lot of research with people. That took me as well, not just to interview users, which is what we usually do when we design services and experience, but also to interview thieves or engaging with stakeholders, which are not the usual stakeholders. So you need to discover your ability, not just to interview people, to run a good interview, which is an art in its own right, but also to engage different group of stakeholders and manage their expectations and trying to let something emerge. That was part of, I would say, facilitating a conversation that led to new information. So increase the shared visibility of what's our understanding of the problem. Some people were saying, I'm not stealing bikes, I'm just taking them away if they are badly locked. And for us, it was like, okay, what is it? What is the insight there? The other aspect of facilitation probably came from the GEM community, and I should thank Adam Lawrence that you've been hosting on this podcast for that contagious sort of community of people wanting to do things. And it's strange because coming from a design background, I studied design, I studied industrial design. I know what affordance mean and how to design products, services, and the elements in between. When all the design thinking bubble burst and there was this idea that anybody can think and act like a designer, I said, well, what should be my role then as a professional designer, or somebody who studied for years this subjects? And I find naturally myself to be the facilitating agent within that community. Like, okay, there's a group of people trying to work together. There is a brainstorming session, very unruled and unstructured. What's your role as professional designers? Can you add quality? Can you add depth to the level of thinking? It's just the first idea that we had, or it's more about iterating and visualizing. I find myself visualizing a lot what people were saying, and that was helpful for the conversation. So yeah, I think that naturally I wasn't doing anything more than just being a designer. But within a room of non-designers, I became the facilitator, the person that facilitates the sort of participatory creative process. So that, I think, it becomes contagious, because in the moment you show something, even if it's a bad squiggle on the wall, or you're not afraid, you have some creative confidence to share with the other people in the room, people get impressed and they start to build on top of that. So it's an enabling factor. What I should say though, because some time ago clients calling me is like, hey, do you have 17 service designers? I was like, why? We need to facilitate an event. I'm not saying that service designer or designers are immediately good facilitators. I mean, I know very amazing designers that are very good at what they do, but they don't work very well when you put them in a room full of people and you ask them to lead an exercise or workshop. So just some designers have the sort of personal attitude, capacity, theatrical experience to hold the space, hold the stage, and get people to pay attention to what you say. So that's, I think, it's some of the aspects of being contagious, which is strange after the pandemic, being contagious, but that's what it is.
Yeah, true. Actually, I didn't think about that one in that sense. And you referred to Adam Lawrence episodes, 2 episodes actually.
Mm-hmm.
We had episode 24 and 25, if I'm not mistaken, of season 1. This is where you bring back the theatrical aspect to it, which you use as well, I guess, in in your facilitation. And yes, I totally agree that not every designer is a facilitator and shouldn't be, actually, because we need both at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's all about working together, as you were saying. Now, I just want to go back to something that is not completely related to facilitation, but it's more about research, like very specifically, but
Mhm.
facilitating the conversation again. You said you interviewed thieves, robbers.
Yeah.
How did you find them?
Well, when you start working on a project with clients, you got the right stakeholders in the room. In the case, working at Design Against Crime back in time, working Camden Council with Metropolitan Police, Transport for London, all the stakeholders involved, and they were the people pointing out, prolific thieves that they knew who they were, and then they knew their problems, so it was easy to go to Brick Lane in East London and find them and approach them. And there are different ways and techniques you can do that. And that, I don't know if it's part of the acting of facilitation, but if I say mystery shopping, isn't that an act of acting? You act out to be a customer. In this case, if you approach somebody trying to sell you a stolen bike, yes, you're acting as customer, and you ask few information about the bike. And sometimes they're very happy to tell you things. For example, something that we weren't expecting is that thieves were very open to tell us about the different perpetrator techniques on how to steal bikes. And there are about 7 that we cluster to be the most common techniques. So they were very proud because it's like, oh, something, look, this is a technique I invented. I do this and this. And you're like, oh, interesting. I should never lock the bike again in that way, because otherwise it's going to be an easy target for thieves. So it's about get the sort of dark side of creativity mode and trying to anticipate. For me, it was, again, going to research. It was really using a range of techniques because we did a lot of observation as well. We stayed hours looking at parking lots, bike parking lots, and see what people were doing, how the users were locking their bikes properly, how the misusers are locking their bike not properly, and how the abusers were taking advantage of all the situations. So it's very kind of ethnography type of research that's just based on observation. Then, of course, you can go and contaminate the fields by interacting with people or by creating prototypes, which are, okay, let's change the setting. Let's move the bike stands. Or, for example, in London, as in the rest of Europe, there's a lot of fly parking. This doesn't apply to Copenhagen, Amsterdam, or places where there is such a high density of bikes. The bikes are everywhere. But in cities like London or other cities in Europe, bikes are actually locked against something, which is a lamppost or a bike stand. And at that point, a lot of people lock their bike. The sort of fly parking, it means you lock your bike to a fence, to a lamppost, which is not the proper bike parking. And that creates a lot of problem, not just to the users, the thieves, but also like to a disabled person passing on the ground floor, and blind people going around, kids from school, because things get stuck in the middle. I'm not even getting to the micro mobility sort of scooter sharing and bike sharing sort of services, because that got very complicated urban setting. But it's interesting to see how many research techniques you can facilitate as a designers, from just observing to listening to interviewing to creating props and artifacts that you put in the ground to change the setting of a physical environment or a digital environment and see how people will react in a test modality, offering them 2 options like A/B testing. Hey, we'll go 2 bike stands, let's see what people prefers, and you wait there for a week and see what people like the most. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is actually, and you're kind of making a smooth transition into what we want to talk about as well. But one thing here that stood out also is, actually I almost forgot what I wanted to say, but it's basically that you're always looking at the wider picture. So yes, you're talking about stealing of bikes and so on, but in actual fact, you're looking at the entire mobility and the system and how people
Yeah.
interact and all of this, and often this is maybe a part dismissed when you're asked to work on a project, for example, or you're hired to work on a project. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe jumping a little bit into consulting here, which is something you do
Yeah.
as well. What are the main challenges you're finding when you wanna I'm gonna call it sell your services, but it's more about adding value and supporting customers and prospects in their challenges.
Yeah, in our conversations with clients, prospects, everybody's looking for some sort of change to happen. Whether it's a tiny improvement to their sales process, whether it's a radical change in the way service is delivered, whether it's change by introducing a new digital elements, or it's about change about removing stuff from their service that got like a patchwork of too many elements, and now they need to simplify and make it clear to the people. So we're trying to understand what do we need to change, and what is the desired impact that we're looking at. What is the effect of these changes? And we can do this in different ways. First of all, we need to understand what needs to be changing, because when we got clients to come with us with the final solution, I need a chatbot. And we don't work specifically in the digital space. Sometimes we need a kiosk. We need a different queuing system in front of the ticket office. Or we need a different training for our employees. That could be as well, looking at the backstage of the services. So the idea of what doesn't need to change is like, why do you need to change? And I always say is that an individual, a person, or an organization will change whenever it's ready to change. Some people trying to anticipate that change, and they're trying to nudge and foster the change to happen. So we need to help them to go. Maybe there is a Trojan horse inside the organization, maybe sitting in the HR department or the marketing department, is trying to make innovation happen, to try to make the organization work more collaboratively. So at the point, the request from the clients is, can you help my organization to be more creative, to increase the creative confidence of the employees? How do we do that? It's about changing something, whether it's changing your internal policies, change the workspace where you actually work, creating more time for innovation or for this sort of opportunities. So it's about changing something, and you need to understand what to change. It's like being a doctor. You need to do the MRI, you need to have the full spectrum of the organism, and then say, oh, what we're going to be changing. I use a metaphor talking about service design, which is this service acupuncture, which is about you cannot chop off arms and replace organs, because that's quite aggressive and quite expensive. So it's about understanding where change needs to happen, and sometimes it's small changes to release that energy and making a big difference. So in consulting, it's all connected. So they come to us as, oh, you're a consultant, you're a designer, can you make change happen for us? And it's like, okay, let's start discovering what kind of change you need. And most of the time, it's not even, I have a joke that says when a clients come to us and ask for a light bulb, I say, how many designers you need to change a light bulb? And the answer is, does it need to be a light bulb? Can it be something else? So are you sure you need a chatbot? Are you sure you need a social media campaign? Are you sure you need that event with 300 people where you do open innovation? Are you sure you need that? What change would you like to see in 6 months, 12 months down the line? So how can we help you enable and support and sustain that change over time? That's always our job. But it always starts with a bit of understanding if that's a real problem. We're trying to get different perspectives from stakeholders, from customers, or from thieves in the case of the bikes, and see the problem from different points of view to see the full complexity of it. At that point, we can build together, okay, what's a good strategy to change something? Should we change the copy of the service? Should we change the actors and the behaviors of people working within it? Should we stop having a physical shop and just go digital? Should we change the way volunteers are operating inside the museum with the school kids when we have big groups? Those are the things we really ask ourselves. And that's the creative design action take place, which is about, okay, how do you change things? Oh, you create new artifacts. You change the order of things in a journey of the customer. How do you improve the hospital waiting room system for patients that really worry about their relatives in the surgery room? How do you use design to make people feel more confident and comfortable and secure? And that is the tweak. That's where design, in terms of creating new stuff and the look and feel of things, comes handy. But it is a result of this first investigation and discovery phase.
So we're gonna use the same jargon that you're using. So you diagnose initially, right, what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
which is very challenging also to make your prospects right aware of why you're doing that before jumping into kind of fixing the symptoms or whatever that may be, and then you work on the experience and so on as well per se, right? In a certain way. So I just want to ask you, if you shared a story about the uh, the thieves and the
Mm-hmm.
stealing of the bikes. Do you have a story where, let's reverse it, you would have done something differently maybe in your approach?
You mean in going ahead with the
Hmm.
creative side
Hmm.
without the research first? Of course, clients come to you and they ask for results. They ask for the effects. And when you say you cannot have these effects without changing something in the way you provide the service, in the way you work and operate, they go like, no, 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 we just want the change. Don't touch anything. Don't change anything. We just want something different, but don't change anything. And you're like, you cannot change your clients. You cannot change the system. You can only change your position in the system, and the system will reorganize organically around your new position. uh, but that's always the request. Can you make change happen without changing anything? It sounds very Sicilian because I'm from Sicily. We sometimes we change everything to let everything stay as it is, but it's not like this. I mean, we cannot really get our clients to buy more of our products and services without first challenging the way we operate and we deliver our products and services. And I say that the backstage and the front stage of a service experience, they are connected by invisible wires. If you want to have the maximize effect in terms of customer experience, if you want the best possible user experience there, you need to change something in the backstage. You need to add personnel, you need to improve the usability of your digital touch points, you need to have more coherent communication across touch points and channels. So that's I know this gets quite jargony, but it has happened sometime where people didn't have budget for research, or they had already done their research, which it's mostly quantitative and numbers and analytics about how many clicks were on the website. And it's really hard to get to the why question you were referring to. It's like, okay, you want to change because you see people behaving weird, like a lot of people adding products to your shopping cart, but then not finishing the purchasing product. So you know that there is a problem, and you ask us to come in and change people. We cannot really go there and change the customer. We need to understand what's happening in the head of customers and why a lot of them are not finalizing the purchasing process. At that point, we need to try ourselves, which is a way of mystery shopping. So, and then we have our own expert view on it. Then we start shadowing people or interviewing people about their own experiences. Why do you stop here? And trying to get their motivations that sometimes are strange, sometimes are very valid, sometimes are unique. Like, oh, I use the shopping carts as a wish list. So when things get discounted, I get a notification. And at that point is when I buy it. You're like, ooh, the client wasn't expecting that. So even if you don't sell research as research, you can also start prototyping, which is another way of investigating concepts. I will discourage. I mean, the hardest sales in a design process generally are the sort of, let's meet the people, the real people, not just the chairmans, the chiefs, and the key stakeholders who already have their own idea around what needs to be developed. But let's meet real people, real customers. That's a harder, especially for some corporates that very strict when you talk about insurance, when you talk about banks, when you talk about going out and talking to the real customers. Is, oh yeah, but we have our inside team is already providing you the NPS results. Can you just read them? I say, no, I need to talk to people about why they chose you, why they're using this service, what are the struggles they're having, and maybe I want to talk to them as well about their previous experiences using other services. And they'll go like, but why do you need all this information? So that's make the conversation richer. That let insights emerge. Sometimes we do service safari, which is taking research to a different service, uh, which is not the industry or the field of what we're studying, to look how different services operate, to see if there are dynamics that we can replicate and borrow to improve the service. And clients go like, wow, I never thought about that. That's cross-pollinating industries and copy-pasting something from a different service. So this is where design and creativity can aid to research. Then I should say that designers traditionally, like clients, are very solution-oriented, solution-focused. So I would say we're not the best researchers. I mean, I met researchers that do that for life or for work, and they're very analytical and very scientific in the way they conduct research. They have structured frameworks, and when you go into qualitative, more visually documented type of research, we're trying to borrow from ethnographic research, but we don't spend weeks or months living with the customers. We try to give them, okay, can we create cultural props, which are elements that we give to the people to try things themselves. Like, can you keep a diary? Can you send me a picture every day of your fridge, of your rubbish, so I understand what you consume? So it's about user-generated contents, and be creative, because we always have very little time and resources to do this phase. So we need to be extremely creative on how we facilitate it. Why do we do this? Because if we don't understand how people live, work, behave, think, we cannot ever generate any form of change. We can only change the shape of a product, but people will keep using it as they were using the one before.
Yeah, true. And yeah, in large organizations and so on, also it's very a hard sell in that way. And you're not trying just to sell service. You're trying to actually make, I'm not going to use the word facilitate because it's just not to confuse, but make your work more valuable in a certain way, and their money spent in a better way. But the best part is if you got all the interviews and so on planned, for example, and then you feel that I think trust plays a key role here. They really need to understand why you're doing this. And, again, with all the privacy and GDPR and whatever issues, I mean, yesterday I had a call like for an insurance thing, and the guy was just reading, imagine like paragraph long sentences to make sure you understand the privacy policies and things like that. It's just like, are you kidding me? But I think, we need more of balance in this world of regulations we're living in as well, from a customer's perspective too.
It is, and I could say as well, working, because in the past I worked with vulnerable people. It's hard to see, but thieves sometimes are vulnerable people, are people with mental disease or problems. Or if you work with young kids or with adults, with people who suffer Alzheimer's, in the UK, they ask you for a CRB check, for a criminal record check, because you need to be a good professional, but also a good person to be working and be exposed with these vulnerable people. And it's interesting because if I think once a client asked us to go and talk with the hidden customers they had, and they're like, who are they? And we're like, we don't know. How do we find them? We don't know. Go and find them. You're like, okay, who are these hidden customers that don't want to show their identity? And we need to go and dig. So the customers our client wanted to know more about their hidden customers. Talking about social services, you can talk about, homeless people or people who kind of disappear from the society right there. And it's like, oh, we want to know how to be better public services and serve also those people. Homeless people, they have some services and rights and money that they could get, but they're not even claiming for that. Why? Why is that? If you're the government and you need to provide support and assistance to vulnerable people, but these vulnerable people are making themselves hard to find. Can you go and find them? And you're like, okay, that's not an easy task. So you need to spend time to detect the hidden needs and invisible people. We did this work with homeless people back in. I had a student from Delphi University who was doing his thesis on a project called Homeless SMS. He's a Korean student, actually, today living in Eindhoven. And it's interesting because we have to spend a lot of time on the ground talking with homeless people. And you cannot go to homeless people asking, hey, why don't you have a house? That's a stupid question to ask a homeless person. So how do you facilitate that sort of conversation? I remember we printed postcards and we are like, from secondary academic research, what are the main reasons why people end up on the ground, living on the streets? So we had these postcards, we put them on the floor, we start offering them some water, maybe a beer, and sitting them next to them, spending some time with them, but closer to ethnography, really. And then we put these cards. I know that every story is unique, and you may have like your own special story. These are the 5-6 common situations why people end up in the streets. What is true for you? If you need to put in order, we use card sorting, which is a technique that we use for designing website or designing better services and experiences. So we use it as a research prop. So, and then there were some blank postcards where people could say their own things. But that was a way to open up conversation and gain their trust, because we're trying to understand their specific situations. I think when you pay attention to people, that's where they open up. And that's an art. As I say, facilitating, interviewing, even listening, your deep listening capacity, it's an art. It took me a long time to develop that because I'm a very Italian talkative person. So sometimes I have to shut up and just listen, open my ear, and let the people speak.
Which is what's taking you into coaching, basically,
Yes.
right? In a certain
Yes.
way. I'm just going to make a quick parenthesis here that actually on LinkedIn, we're supposed to be online at 10. This is why we have no one online, actually. But I can repost
Time differences.
Time differences, exactly. So
yeah, I got my calendar from LinkedIn. It was saying later.
Yeah.
11. I don't know. I thought it was just a mismatch mistake with the time zones.
Yeah,
you were
I
in
think
the UK.
so. Yeah, that's it. So I don't know how that's going to work on Restream. So apologies if anyone said they're signing up, but this will probably be, will be posted anyway. Will be online, so it's fine. All right.
Technologies, there are things, that's the beauty thing, unexpected change. How do you navigate the ambiguity of unexpected changes? Sometimes we come in not just to understand what needs to be changed, but we're called in because something has changed or something is changing so fast that it's hard to understand. So for us, it's also part of understanding change, our job.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, if like when this gets aired, if there's a huge, massive demand, whatever, we will do another live. There we go.
We'll do another live, definitely.
All right,
on the beach, because we're getting closer to summer. So
yeah, Sicily. There we go. But on that note, you were organizing the service design boot camps, right? How would I call service design South, right?
South, yes.
South in Sicily. What happened to this?
Yeah, we get back to coaching later, but let me tell you more about training. Because I started my training experience. I graduated from Central St. Martin from my master in 2008, so 2008. There was the crisis, the beginning of the economic crisis as we knew it. Then I worked at Design Against Crime. Then around 2011, we started the first short course at Central St. Martin on service design. There were very few in Europe. It was a 2-week short course on service design, full on. And that format worked very well in London, although I remember when we went to, Central St. Martin is very well known for fashion, textile, and innovation in that field. And when we told them we would like to organize a service design course, they like, it's a surface design course. No, it's not surface. It's not about materials, or it's about service. And they're like, are you sure people are going to sign up? Then it was extremely successful, and we led that with a bunch of colleagues, with my colleague Bruno Taylor, Jonas Speed, and then we passed on to Antonio Iederola and a few other people, and Antonio Sternino, that I know you know. So it's a small community. It's interesting because that was my experience building a training program, and for 5 years we did the summer version, we did the winter version, we did the Easter version with the shorter, longer evening. So we play around with formats, with training formats, and we got amazing people coming from all over the world with completely different expertise that wanted to know more about service design, public sector employees, entrepreneur, consultants, facilitators, designers, non-designers. So it was very, very good. I think it was very good to build a community of practitioners I'm still in touch with today. That was before the master you did at the Polytechnic in Milan. The master in service design started, because I think it started in 2012, something like that. So it was just the very beginning of all those programs. After 6 years, though, the fact that I moved back to Italy as well, and I was doing stuff in Syracuse with Impact Hub, a place for change makers, for people that make change happen through social entrepreneurship on the Mediterranean level. I thought, why don't we take service design from the epicenter where design happens, Milan, London, Paris, which are the places where I was teaching and working. So why don't we take to the border of Europe? Why don't we take it to Sicily? Why don't we start thinking about service design south? How do you design services in the south of Europe, in the south of the world? What are the challenges? And of course, when we start doing this 2 weeks or 1 week, we try different formats as well in Sicily, in Syracuse, and then in Catania. We still had a lot of people coming from San Francisco, digital service sort of council, but we also had people coming from Egypt, people coming from the southern of Europe, and you had the different blends. And there, the capacity is not just about learn how to design a service, but is try to have this sort of capacity to plant the seed, because services in the south of the world work very more less transactionally, and they're more about relationships. Like relationships win over usability and transactions. That's why usually we get services that are not very nicely designed, but they work anyway because there are nice people behind it that make them work. But they work extra hours and they suffer a lot for it. So how can we adjust that? So it's a different take on what the design of services could be. And we know that I've been studying and reading books and articles from my colleagues in the Netherlands, in Germany, in the UK. I say, yeah, but, and even from the Polytechnic in Milan, but what about the south of Italy? What about the south of Europe? You come from Lebanon, and you think about different areas where design can bring a lot of value, but it's still an art sale, and it still seems like expensive lamps and expensive posters, while you're talking about creative processes that can improve a pharmacy to do better their job, so that during the pandemic can distribute better, clear information. And will they spend 5,000 euro for service design of pharmacy? Probably not yet. Should they? Maybe. Will they get a return on their investment? Surely.
I like how you put it together, but it's so true. And yes, I mean, I agree. Yeah, one thing I think we agree on as well. Yes, the South probably, but I know more about Lebanon probably. That is probably like worse than the South or anywhere else in that sense. But you know, things work. People find a way to make things work within chaos. Now it's worse than what it was, I must say, with everything. You know, this is like, it's a bit unbelievable. What's happening there, from like the deterioration that happened that no one would have thought of, because it couldn't get worse than that, and it got worse. But things work, and I don't know if it's a question of mindset. People are used to getting squeezed to the maximum of the worst that can happen and just figure it out and go along with it. I don't know, but design can help. Design is gonna make miracles there, but maybe help within the mindset of people. We're talking about change and so on here. Yeah. It's about, you know, understanding that
when you are with your back, when you are with your back against the wall, you boost your creativity, your creative confidence rates, because of needs, because of necessity. And that's why we say as thieves are creative in the way they make a life by stealing bikes. Even people finding themselves in complicated, you know, jobless, unemployed, long-term unemployed, is going to find its own way to make it happen. Then, of course, you need to foster this creativity before it becomes something bad. You know, you need to channel that creativity in something that can be useful long-term. What designers do differently from maybe some artisans who master their craft, it's trying to find the sort of replicable and transferable models that allow other people to be creative at the same time. So this idea that, you know, I've been creative because I come out with one idea, great. Come out with one idea every week. No, that's a hard job. If you don't get into is there a framework to come up with an idea every week? Yes. You know, it's just brainstorming? No, it's much more complicated. Brainstorming is just a buzzword. it's there to say, hey, that's the range of activities that you can do, from game storming, body storming, and visual. There are so many techniques and tools and rules, but again, you don't need to be the process experts. But how do you go from, oh, I had an idea, or I come out with, I got a service work, I got this lemonade stands to work because I've been creative and I've been entrepreneurial, I got some funny ideas. Okay, how do you create a lemonade stands in all the cities? It's like, it's not my job. Clearly, it's not your job, but that's what a designer is called to do. So now, if you want to do a bike sharing in Beirut, and then you want to replicate in El Cairo, and then you want to replicate in Palermo, similar environments, different cultures. So it's not just copy paste. It's about understanding what are the elements that can be replicated, what are the elements that need to be adapted. But you need to have an idea on how the service could work. So that's what designers add, is this consciousness to the design action. You're not just design. Services have always been there. This idea of designing them carefully and consciously, and designing the elements that connect them, that's what service design is about. So I'm saying service design is not new, but the way we do it, it is new, and it's still quite hard to transfer to clients and to communities, because you're referring as well to social innovation projects. So how do you enable a quarter to design their own service together with the city hall? I'm living here in Bologna, where we have civic imagination process for proximity work with citizens. This is what the city council of Bologna is doing through a foundation called the Fondazione Innovazione Urbana, which is a urban innovation foundation. So they do this regularly, which is not about participative budgeting, but it's also about engaging people in shaping and designing together the services that we use every day as citizens, and see the city as the service provider. So that's an interesting journey, taking service design off the corporates or the digital and taking to community level. And then you may end up designing apps, you may end up designing events, you may end up designing training courses, you may design stuff for tourists and local residents to come together and create value together. So it's change happening at a different pace, maybe in a different way, in a different context.
Yeah, what you're saying is interesting, because there are also service designers who, I'm going to use the word specialize, but or focus on, for example, healthcare, or, you're saying on the public sector, and be very vertical in certain areas, because, as you said, services are not you, and they're everywhere. And they constantly need a rethink and an upgrade. And then I'm going to call it maintenance, service maintenance and monitoring in a certain way. So you touched on a few things here. So I'm just conscious of time and what we can talk about. We're going to get into coaching last, but I want to touch on something interesting, because you're saying we talk about service design, and it's kind of a conversation I had with Adam Lawrence also, because in the book he's co-authored also with other people. It's called Service Design Thinking, service design doing. So what's your view on, you spoke about the design thinking bubble in a certain way, right? What's your view on, using design thinking, service design, and their applications? Because we have people who believe that design thinking is something, service design is something else. Some say it's the same thing. And, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this one. It's just and I don't like to, as a designer myself also, and I'm not into silos, in that sense. We need to be kind of open and use different things. But from a marketing perspective, things can be different also. So what's your view on that? What do you use? I'm
going to share my standing. I got my perspective. My company is called Common Ground because I like bridging, elements and bridging disciplines. And I like this idea of mixing. So I like the fusion of terminologies. I don't like confusion. So that's what I'm fighting for. If you say design thinking and service design are the same thing, I would say no. Design thinking and service design, should we explain to people they are two different? I say probably not. Let them call whatever they want. So I agree on let them sometimes they call it open innovation, sometimes they call it, we're trying to do customer experience, but they're working on usability of digital devices. So for me, it's user experience rather than customer experience. So there is a confusion around terminology. And I had a lot of clients and colleagues and students asking me to do this game of nesting dolls, what's staying under. So I did this work for Bosch, a German company. And for example, everything comes under the UX sort of department, even design thinking and service design, they're nested underneath. And that's fine, because for them, UX design, it's core, and that's what they do. And what Don Norman will say, the UX design is about everything. So I will also agree with people who say, hey, but there's no difference between UX design and service design. If we look at the etymologies of the names and the service, I would say, yes, you're right. If we see how industries understand UX design to be digital space and designing interfaces, chatbots, softwares and stuff, and then you see service design as something more cross-channel, more physical and digital, more backstage. So at that point, I would say, no, there's clear difference between service design and UX design. They're complementary, but they're not the same thing. In the same way, design thinking and service design, I think design thinking's got the great merit to rebrand something that we knew as design, but to get the conversation to a higher level, to get designers sitting at the decision-making table with all the other important stakeholders. And it opens up and it makes designers popular in that way. So design thinking, apart of being used on more the explorative, innovative product phase sort of aspect on how can you burst innovation, how can you radically change. So I think if you talk about design thinking, for example, it's aiming at a bigger change. Well, service design, it's about tweaking small changes and optimizing services. It could also be seen that way. But design thinking got a greater responsibility to designers. So now designers needs to be responsible not just to improve how this mouse work and how the keyboards, it's not just about the shape of the button, but it's the quality of the hospital stay, for example. The tackling mental illness, or juggling with different disciplines. I would say the design thinking has made designers put in a different position, and at that point we gain this visibility and therefore responsibility. Service design, you can also see, is the design thinking applied to the design of services. Okay, so it's the design thinking process, as we know, but you're not designing programs or marketing campaigns. I mean, design thinking is versatile. You can design many things with it. You can use design thinking to renovate products, to change company strategies, to rethink the employee engagement, to do whatever. But service design is the design of services. You can design new services, or you can improve existing services. It's all around. Then we can discuss about what is a service. Is a hospital a service? Is a airport a service, or is an ecosystem of services? Because of course the lemonade stand or the barber shop, it's a smaller service, while how do we clean the city and how do we handle rubbish and differentiate recycling, that becomes quite a bigger service. It's just the spectrum of complexity. However, service design is closer to adjusting, improving services, managing stakeholders, front stage, backstage. Some design thinkers are great at what they do, but if you tell them, hey, have you ever done a service blueprint? They don't even know what it is. This is not all of design thinkers. The other thing that I really believe that anybody can be a design thinker in a way that you can think in a more collaborative, human-centered, visual, collaborative. You can iterate your process. So you can make this. Can you be a design doer? Can you actually make things? Can you design a logo that works and get recognized across touch points? Can you really think of the number of interfaces and how these things interconnect with each other when you design a mobile app? We can all be design thinkers, but to get design practitioner level, you need to study years. You're not engineer thinking, yeah, I can think like an engineer, but can I build a bridge? And can I take a course? Can I do an engineer sprint in 5 days and build a bridge? Probably not. That's the same for design sprints or many of these other things. They are all useful stuff if you have somebody who mastered the discipline. And going back to what you're saying, some people work in-house. Yeah, service designers, if we see them as change makers, you can be freelancer professional that work across clients, or you can be an in-house designers working within the department of a hospital and trying to make that improve, not just change, tiny change improvement over time, incremental change. And at that point, you will be the Trojan horse. You'll be the person working within. It's a different job in a way that you need to fit more, and you cannot just be creative as you wish. You're not an external consultant or an external facilitators coming with your magic wand and asking the big what if question. You need to have the status to do that internally. But in-house, freelancing, agency work, these are all way of creating change as a designer.
I like how you gave the idea of, incremental changes and so on, because this is so much needed in many organizations where it's where one wouldn't even think about and think that it's marvelous. But I spoke with also designers in design teams where some designers are suffering in large organizations. I think we must say it in a certain way because it's a completely different mindset, and they're not able to do their job like at their best because it's very difficult to navigate the system. I think that what you're trying to do, like creating this community of practitioners and so on, I think there's lots of motivation that is needed and confidence, but mostly motivation, and showcase that small changes, even if you don't see them sometimes, are very important. And I think this is something to I think our role maybe also is to find those many designers in those large organizations who maybe don't know how to start, or they lost hope in a certain way, and saying that they can do more, but it's so difficult. I don't know why I'm talking about this. I get emotional about this.
They need a safety net. I think the community, the Gen community, the global service design community, the service design dreams, these are all opportunities for these designers to feel understood by a set of other practitioners to do. It's very, very hard to work in-house and to be the only designer in a team of non-designer. Of course, you can bring your facilitation capacity, but can you design stuff, everything on your own? Probably no. That's why you need external agencies at that point. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a book which speaks about service design for small and medium enterprises. And of course, I was targeting how do we tune down, without reducing the complexity of what we're talking about, because service design can be quite complex, but how can we tune down the jargon and the language in a way that we get understood and we talk the language of our clients. So going back to the pharmacy, going back to the barber shop, going back to the small and medium enterprise in Italy, but in Europe and in the world in general, they're like 80% of our economy. Is just they don't have great budgets for R&D or for big innovation projects. That's more corporate type stuff. So how do you get them to start small? And that's the idea of the book. The idea of the book is how do you take design, service design as an inception mechanism. Hey, you can start doing things on your own, that you may need the help of a professional. Maybe you can do something with design students. Maybe you can connect. So how do you open up and how do you start small? I know how do you do service design straight away? Let's do a full service design project. It required 300,000 euro to start. How do you do something with 15,000 euro? And that for many, small and medium enterprise, I'm not talking about startups, but I'm talking about SMEs that never try service design. This will be scary. 15 euro in something we don't even know what it's going to deliver. Yeah, you can adjust. But the idea is to start small. You can see how do you do design for small organizations, or how do you do small service design projects within your big organization? Because sometimes you are a service designer, but you're actually a job title in the organization is not service designer, it's something else. So you're trying to bring some service design thinking and doing inside your big organization, and rather to do the big project is going to change the company, you're trying to do one small thing at a time. That's also the start small approach. So let's turn a meeting into a workshop. That would be an idea. Let's talk to more stakeholders, or let's interview the users before taking a decisions. Let's run a test. These are all elements of when we talk about design. That's what we really mean.
No, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up because I was keeping the author, you're also an author, till, till somewhere in the conversation. And yeah, actually, that's what your book is about. So it's in Italian. I'm going to be posting the link.
Unfortunately, it's in Italian yet. Yeah, it was a bit of an experiment. It was born during the pandemic. It was published, so a bit of an unfortunate time. I may see in the future if publishing something in English. At the moment, we're still collecting feedback and talking to peers to see how it landed. But this idea is a bit of a suicidal idea of going to the side of Europe and trying to make service design where it's needed, or told to small companies. There are many, but they are not really buying design at the moment. But it could be an opportunity. For me, it's the blue ocean I'm looking for. It's not the idea of building a massive agency with a lot of employees and do a lot of corporate work. It's this idea to bring design where it's really needed, and a lot of small companies, services I use every day. I got the printer broken here in my office yesterday, and I called the local company who's hiring us in leasing, and they need a lot of service design. It's just we suffer every day as citizens, as business owners, from many services that are poorly designed. That's the design debt that we pay off to society. So can we improve small services, daily services, and do the small changes that make our life better?
Yeah, because that's the competitive advantage today. It's not the quality that we used to buy like before, like the German car, whatever. Like now you have people who buy like any car based on their service, right?
Mm.
As well. So cool. We're gonna be live in like less than 4 minutes, and we're getting to the end anyway of this episode. But I would like to be live for a minute at least, just
Yeah.
if you don't mind. Um, cool. So there are a few things I want to ask you based on our conversations, but this is not based on our conversation. So what is your relationship with your gut feeling? WGUTT.
WGUTT, my gut feeling. I would say that my relationship with my gut feeling has changed over time. I was brave and fearless when I was younger. I was enthusiastic and passionate, and I was really trusting my gut feeling. That took me to take big risks, to travel around the world, to be on stage where I shouldn't be on stage, but I wanted to be on stage anyway. So it took me there to take the scene and build a network of relationships, which I really value today. But then I did a bit of a journey of exploring a bit inside myself, rather than looking at the interesting things and the books and the people and following, rather than be excited about the world, I started looking into my inner world, and I started becoming more aware of my limits and my vulnerabilities. And this was part of the coaching process that we mentioned before. I took a coaching course, a systemic coach. So the deep listening, listen rather than told, being an enabler without being on stage, be a leader, but not by pushing things, but because your follower push you there. So all this attitude took my gut feeling to a completely different stage, which means I'm more conscious. I'm probably less confident in that brave and fearless young way. I'm more conscious of my capacity, and I pay more attention to the gut feeling of people who go around me. So my associates, my partner, they become like, I trust their gut feeling sometimes more than I trust my own. And that it means that my gut feeling is not just my own gut feeling. I don't like to work in isolation. I work with students, I work with colleagues, I collaborate with people. Every project is different. So I do try to sense the gut feeling of people who go around when we work on something, because I think it's a better way of making decisions rather than making decisions on my own. And
How do you do that?
how do I do that? It's just ask and listen. It's
Okay.
about, it sounds so simple, but it's like short debrief after a meeting. How did you think that go? Asking this sort of question that go more on the, hey, what's your immediate feeling? When we meet a person, this is one of the coaching rules. It sounds quite strange. It's like when you meet a person for the first time, and maybe this is going to be a coachee, write down your first impressions. You're like, why? Your first impression probably going to be wrong. Yeah, but you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. So note down what you get, the perception, and then work around it. Then, of course, you get to know the person more. But even after a meeting, what was our first impression? Sometime to capture and get the sort of gut elements. We knew that we started some projects for money, or for because it's an opportunity. We're going to say no because it's going to be visibility, because it's a big client, big name. but we had the gut feeling it was not right, and it was a nightmare project. So how do we avoid those sort of projects? How do we keep working on projects that we keep loving and keep liking our clients? I like to go back with small organization, but at the moment we're doing work with Slow Food, for example, a European and Italian level. And of course, Slow Food is a non-for-profit organizations with all the limits of organization stuff, but they're really passionate about what they do, and we're learning a lot from them. So it's a pleasure to support them with it. And when I talk with my colleague and partner, say, "Hey, what's your gut feeling?" It's, that feels good. It may not be a lot of money, but it feels good. It feels right. So that's the gut feeling, and I should say as well that my gut feeling back in time, it was faster in from feeling to action. I was very entrepreneurial in that way. I think something, therefore I do it. And now I think something. Let me talk with somebody to see if I'm thinking right, if my feelings are going the right direction before acting. That's another. It's not a stepping back. I think it's part of growing up and being more conscious of what you can or you shouldn't do. And therefore, I think that's making us better.
Cool. And it's a series of experiences, I guess, that make you. I'm gonna use the word wiser. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
it, but in a certain way, yeah. No, cool. So let's just back to coaching. What is it that made you want to go into coaching? And we're live, by the way.
Hello, everybody. We're live, but we're ready at an hour conversation.
Exactly. So we're wrapping
Mismatch of
up.
time.
So
So it's interesting. So hello, everybody. What got me into coaching? I was at some point in my career, after done a lot, I've been collecting a lot of different experiences, working with different clients, and I wanted to focus and be more balanced myself. Um, Balancing not just my life and work sort of combination, also because my partner is my associate in the company, so we got a lot of life work relationships happening around my small design studio. And I wanted to pay attention to my inner world. I wanted to learn about myself. I wanted to really learn about others in a different way, and that, I think, it helped me slowing down. He helped me practicing this art of listening, this art of paying attention. You can be a consultant, you can be a good friend, you can be, whoever. But the best thing you can give to a friend, a colleague, or a client is not your recommendation or your idea, but it's giving your full attention. That's the biggest gift you can give. At that point, that changed my perspective. Sometimes I felt the urgency of providing the right answer when a client or a colleague or a student would ask me something. I was like, I need to say the right thing. I need to help this person. This idea that I need to help people. And then I realized that the best way to help people is not giving the answer, but asking the right questions. That's what all coaching is about. So I was like, so you say this, what makes you feel that? So exploring their gut feeling became my job, and that worked very well. Not just for me, because I can relax and I can master other aspects of my facilitation, designing, researcher, consulting work. I also teach at the university, so I got a lot of very young students asking questions. They say, I got stupid questions. I say, I love stupid questions. Go on with stupid questions. We should do just stupid question type of podcast. But because they're very interesting questions that comes from their feelings. So it took off some pressure from my shoulder of providing always the right answer. And it also worked better for people, because when people start building on the things they have already, when people start crafting their own answer, it's a change that sticks longer than any. So even with clients and organization, now going from people coaching to group coaching or organizational coaching, any change that comes from within lasts longer. It sticks. While any change taken from benchmark, copy paste, look what other agencies are doing, use this business model and trying to make your own, it's a pain. Let's remember that change, even in physics, is a painful process. It takes energy, it produces heat, So change status, change, even for an organization, it takes time. It takes, oh, I shouldn't throw the rubbish on Wednesday anymore. I need to throw it on Friday. Oh my God, that's a change because my council changed the rule on how we collect glass, and that's painful. We need to remember things. We need to behave in a different way. Or even for me, listening more was be painful because I was always feeling the urgency to say something. Say, no, shut up, just listen. It's just you don't need. And that's very important when you do research or when you do coaching, that you don't feed with your bias the person you're talking to. So that's why coaching. That's why I must say that when I ended up the coaching period, I was really, in this curve that we're here and we want to get better. But before getting better, you need to go down. It's called like the U theory. So you need to go down to a level of vulnerability by discovering your limits. And when you hit the bottom, you're like, I'm not really that special. I'm just a process expert. You need to do a bit of shower of humbleness.
Digest it.
Yeah, you're like, okay, these are my limits, but these are what I'm good at. And then you start building on that, and that becomes into this design thinking process. You start structuring the profile you want to be. So I think I'm trying to blend this coaching world with the design world. I start talking about design coaching. What is it? Design coaching. It's not therapy. It's not medical, but it's looking at the future. It's looking at the change you can produce and the effects of that change. So how can that be useful to professionals, colleagues? Say, I need to run a series of workshops. I have no idea how to do it. How to handle workshop, how to handle stakeholders, how to use mural instead of physical presence things. How do you do this? How do you keep the engagement high? Can you coach me on that? It's not being a mentor. So I'm not being a service design mentor to other younger service designers, but I've been a design coach by using design methods, design way of thinking and doing and acting and deciding in jobs that are not always design. So I had consultants, I had people that do different jobs that just need support. People that work in the digital space, they would like to know more about how to work with people. And so we've been going in this design coaching new experiment, which I believe it could become the future of what I do.
Interesting. I like this wrap up. So I guess, quick one, do you still have time to learn all the time? Or, I mean, you learn while doing everything, right? But dedication.
It is
Do you sleep?
interesting. I think I'd hear around the great book on liminal thinking, and it's how do you create, and thinking about liminal thinking. What is liminal? Again, sorry, I get this last thing because liminal is about the space, whether it's physical or time for change. So in the time that you start at graduation and you are a student, but you're not graduate, but you are in the ceremony, the graduation, so that's a liminal space where you are about to pass stage in life from students to graduate. What is the space that we can make in our life to learn from being, I know this much, there is this something else that I could discover and learn. How do I make space for that? That means dedicating time to read. That means dedicating time to study. And I got two metaphors. One is from a colleague of mine. They look like two Chinese wisdom sort of things. And one is in the book of called Liminal Thinking by Dave Gray, same author of Team Storming and many other things. And one is the first say is they're about cups, about water cups. One is you cannot pour any more water from an empty cup. So it means that if you keep repeating your story, you keep teaching, you never learn. At some point, your cup is going to be empty. So you need to refill it and put something in it. And that's a good metaphor to say you need to keep learning throughout your professional career. The other story, which is in the book, is the story of this man who wanted to learn about meditation and Buddhism. I don't even remember the story. He go to his Zen master and he say, "Hey, I want to learn more. I know this, I know this." And the guy is kind of pouring the tea in a cup. And at some point, the cup is full and the tea start overspilling. And the guy is talking. I said, "Stop!" It was like, "Stop! It's full. It's overfilling." You're like, "Yeah. If you want any of my wisdom, you need to empty a bit of your cup to make space." which means we need to get rid of some of the things that we know already, some of our beliefs and ideas. We know how it works life. We know what business needs. We think we got it. We think we know it all. At some point, we need to empty a bit of our cap to let somebody to fill it again. Otherwise, we're never going to learn anything new.
Cool, like faire table rase, like in French. But so I think we could go on forever, but I think you have a project to work on. I hope you're enjoying the process. I'm sure you are. So last thing, so where to find you? Obviously, I'm gonna post your website, your LinkedIn handle, Twitter. Let me know if there's anything else, how people can get in touch, and what are you looking for as well.
Right. So yeah, you can find me all across social media. In the past couple of years during the pandemic, I had a bit of a down tune on my social presence. That's also because I wrote a book and I had a baby, and that combined with the pandemic became a bit of interesting things to focus more about life and to be more reflective. But you can find me across all social media, from LinkedIn to Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I got my personal website. But we're also rebuilding my company website, Common Ground, also because we got a few more ideas on how to communicate ourselves, not being the traditional service design agency. We are a studio, so we do a lot of facilitation and create new formats. So we have new ideas as well on what's the right language to be out there. So that's something's going to be released soon. What I would like to do in the future, well, I would like to, do more design coach, maybe share experiences with our design coaches. They are, or self-defined design coaches they are around. So I'm always happy to meet and learn. I hope to travel a bit more. I missed a lot of the sort of conference spaces the sort of liminal spaces where you meet people and learn something new you discover from somebody else's experience. I hope that now with the pandemic, things are going to come back to normal, or to the future normal, whatever that means. And that's it. I'm happy to do small experiments. So not always big projects that take 3 years to make. If any of you is happy to try things out or do small experiments, call us, because we are all about small changes, starting small and small experiments.
Cool. Thank you so much for this. All the links will be in the bio. And yes, thank you everyone for listening live to this God Talks podcast where we were not live. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. I'm going to click on end stream